For years, audiences believed they understood Professor McGonagall. She was strict, intelligent, calm under pressure, and almost impossibly composed. She could silence a classroom with a single look and command attention without ever raising her voice. To millions of viewers around the world, she felt unshakable. But what almost nobody realized was that while those films were being made, the woman behind that cold stare was quietly fighting a battle so brutal that there were days she could barely stand between takes. The children on set did not fully know. Much of the crew did not know either. Fans certainly had no idea. They saw discipline, elegance, and authority on screen. What they did not see was exhaustion, pain, fear, and the determination of a woman refusing to let illness take away the work she had spent her entire life mastering. And the truth is, that hidden strength did not suddenly appear during the Harry Potter years. It had been building inside Maggie Smith since childhood. Long before she became one of the most respected actresses in British history, she was simply Margaret Natalie Smith, born in 1934. Her early life was quiet and ordinary in ways people rarely expect from legendary performers. Her father worked as a pathologist. Her mother was a secretary. There was no glamorous beginning waiting for her, no grand entrance into fame. The family eventually settled in Oxford, where books, routine, and silence shaped much of her childhood. But silence affected Maggie differently after her father died when she was still very young. Loss changed her. People who knew her later in life often described her as sharp, observant, and emotionally controlled. Those qualities did not come from nowhere. They were built early. As a child, she struggled with insecurity and a painful stutter that made speaking difficult. Words could betray her at the worst possible moment. So, instead of competing to be heard, she learned to watch people. She studied expressions, hesitation, body language, and tone. Without realizing it, she was already training herself to become an actress. There was also something strange and contradictory about her even then. Despite her fear of speaking, she could suddenly become fearless in performance. At one point, she stood in church and recited poetry with such confidence that she stunned the room into silence. For a brief moment, the fear disappeared completely. That became one of the defining patterns of her life. Off stage, Maggie Smith could be guarded, private, and uncomfortable with attention. On stage, she transformed into someone utterly commanding. By the time she was a teenager, acting had become more than a dream. It became survival. She joined the Oxford Playhouse and threw herself into theater work with total commitment. The glamour people associate with great actors was nowhere to be found. She lived cheaply, often in freezing rooms, surviving on almost nothing while trying to build a career in one of the hardest professions imaginable. But struggle sharpened her. Unlike many performers who tried desperately to appear charming or likable, Maggie developed something far more unusual. She learned how to weaponize intelligence. Her wit became razor sharp. Her delivery became unpredictable. She could make people laugh while simultaneously making them uncomfortable. And that difference made her impossible to ignore. When she eventually crossed into bigger productions and theater circles, critics did not always know what to make of her. Some found her too strange. Others thought she lacked conventional warmth. But the more audiences watched her, the more they realized they were seeing something rare. An actress who refused to soften herself to fit expectations. Even rejection failed to stop her. She applied multiple times to prestigious drama institutions and was turned away. For many young actors, that would have destroyed confidence completely. For Maggie Smith, it became motivation. Instead of chasing approval, she focused on becoming undeniable through performance itself. And that decision changed everything. By the early 1960s, theater audiences were beginning to witness something extraordinary. Maggie could step into completely different personalities with frightening precision. One moment she was emotionally cold and cutting, the next she was vulnerable, fragile, and heartbreaking. Critics began running out of ways to describe her presence on stage. She was not merely acting. She seemed to disappear into people. That intensity came with a cost. As her career exploded, her personal life became increasingly complicated. Her marriage to actor Robert Stevens was passionate but deeply unstable. There were struggles with alcohol, emotional chaos, and unpredictability behind closed doors. While audiences applauded her brilliance at night, she was often carrying enormous private strain during the day. Yet, even emotional turmoil somehow fed her performances. People began noticing that her characters carried unusual emotional weight. Anger felt real. Exhaustion felt real. Sarcasm felt dangerous instead of playful. Maggie Smith had discovered how to pour real pain into fictional people without losing control of the performance itself. Then Hollywood truly took notice. When she appeared in the prime of Miss Jean Brodie, everything changed permanently. Her performance was bold, intelligent, funny, manipulative, and emotionally layered all at once. She did not play the character safely. She played her like a complicated force of nature. The Oscar win that followed shocked some people at the time, but looking back, it feels inevitable. Maggie Smith was not becoming successful because she followed industry rules. She was succeeding because she completely ignored them. And over the following decades, she built one of the most remarkable acting careers anyone had ever seen. What made her unique was not simply talent. Plenty of actors are talented. Maggie Smith possessed something rarer. She understood tension. She understood silence. She understood how stillness itself could dominate a room. That quality appeared again and again throughout her career. In a room, with a view, she transformed a socially rigid older woman into someone simultaneously ridiculous and intimidating. Her dialogue felt sharp enough to wound people. Even her smallest reactions carried judgment. Yet beneath all the humor and snobbery, audiences sensed loneliness and fear hiding underneath. That became one of her greatest strengths as an actress. She never played cruelty as simple cruelty. She always suggested something deeper buried underneath. The same thing happened years later in Gosford Park. As an aging aristocrat clinging desperately to status and control, Maggie delivered insults with such precision that other actors reportedly felt genuinely intimidated during scenes. But viewers could also feel the desperation underneath the character's arrogance. That complexity made her unforgettable. Even children felt her power on set. While filming The Secret Garden, young actors were reportedly frightened by her presence as Mrs. Medlock. She barely needed to raise her voice. A stare alone could freeze the room. She moved through scenes with absolute control, making the character feel cold, severe, and emotionally imposing. But once again, there was more beneath the surface. Her performance hinted at grief, repression, and emotional damage hidden under strict discipline. Maggie Smith never allowed villains or authority figures to become one-dimensional. And then, just when many actors begin fading into the background of the industry, she somehow reinvented herself all over again. Downton Abbey introduced her to an entirely new generation. As Violet Crawley, she became the heartbeat of the show almost instantly. The role seemed perfectly designed for everything Maggie Smith did best. Timing, precision, dry wit, absolute authority. Every line felt sharpened like a blade before delivery. Viewers adored her because she could say something devastating while sounding perfectly polite. The famous "What is a weekend?" line exploded across popular culture because it captured exactly what made her special. Another actor might have delivered the joke broadly. Maggie delivered it with complete sincerity, which somehow made it infinitely funnier. Writers quickly realized something important. Scenes became more alive the moment she entered them. Even at an age when most performers slow down, Maggie Smith remained dominant. She won awards, stole scenes effortlessly, and became the defining presence of the series. But once again, audiences only saw part of the truth. Behind the camera, her health was becoming increasingly difficult. Glaucoma had begun severely affecting one eye. Reading scripts became painful. Bright lights during filming were exhausting. Directors quietly adjusted camera angles to help hide physical limitations from viewers. Most actors would have reduced their workload dramatically. Maggie Smith refused, and that refusal became even more astonishing once people learned what she had endured during the Harry Potter films. When she first appeared as Professor McGonagall, audiences immediately believed in her. She carried herself like someone who had ruled Hogwarts for decades. Every movement looked controlled. Every glance carried intelligence and authority. The younger cast members reportedly felt intimidated simply standing near her at first, not because she was cruel, but because she radiated seriousness. When Maggie Smith walked onto set, people behaved differently. She did not approach the role like fantasy escapism. That was part of why the character worked so well. While many actors leaned into the magical side of the world, Maggie grounded McGonagall in reality. She played her like a strict but deeply capable teacher whose standards never slipped. That realism gave the character weight. But privately, the experience was not always magical for her. Maggie Smith came from the theater world. She loved the unpredictability of live performance, the danger of emotional spontaneity, the feeling that anything could happen on stage. Film sets, especially giant franchise productions, often involved endless waiting, repetitive reaction shots, heavy costumes, and technical delays. She later admitted parts of the process frustrated her, and then everything became much harder. During the later Harry Potter films, Maggie Smith was diagnosed with breast cancer. Suddenly, the woman audiences viewed as indestructible was enduring chemotherapy while still trying to continue one of the biggest film franchises in the world. The treatment devastated her physically. She later admitted there were days she felt flattened by exhaustion. Standing became difficult. She sometimes needed support just to move safely between takes. Chemotherapy caused her hair to fall out completely. She worked under wigs while trying to maintain the stern authority audiences expected from McGonagall. There were moments she seriously considered quitting. That detail changes the way people now watch those films. Because when audiences revisit scenes from Half-Blood Prince or Deathly Hallows, they are not just watching a performer in costume anymore. They are watching someone fighting through illness while refusing to surrender her professionalism. And remarkably, almost nobody watching could tell. That was the astonishing thing about Maggie Smith. She never turned suffering into spectacle. She did not publicly dramatize her pain. She carried it privately and continued working. The younger cast members only fully understood later what she had endured during filming. After her death, many spoke emotionally about how kind, witty, and composed she remained despite the enormous physical strain she was under. That quiet endurance made people admire her even more. Because the truth is, Maggie Smith's strength was never loud. She was not interested in presenting herself as inspirational. She disliked unnecessary sentimentality and often mocked excessive praise with dry humor. Even when discussing awards and honors, she treated them with a certain amused skepticism, as though she could see the absurdity hidden inside ceremony and prestige. Yet the honors kept coming anyway. She became one of the most decorated actresses Britain had ever produced. Damehoods, awards, fellowships, standing ovations, global admiration. The industry simply could not ignore her impact. And still, age kept demanding more from her physically. After a hip replacement, movement became increasingly painful. She relied more heavily on a cane off-screen. Long filming days became exhausting, but even then, she carefully protected the illusion audiences saw on screen. That discipline remained intact all the way into her later performances. When she returned to the stage for A German Life, audiences witnessed something extraordinary.